welcome to Planning Phase Syndicate. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Tonight, we have an actual episode. So I know we've been streaming a lot of XCC games. If you're joining us because you have seen us on the XCC side, throw a comment up in the chat and say, hey, how's it going, brother? This is the stream that I saw you on. Tonight, we have an amazing episode called The Little Clanker Who Could. We are going to take a little bit of a dive into a discussion about swarms, swarm play. We're going to bring in some TTS, kind of show you some different things about formation flying, obstacle placement, what happens when we break up squads, network calculates, struts, and those type of things. So we're going to have that conversation. We're going to also do a what turns my dials, because Matt's going to come in and tell us why he doesn't like overcorrecting points and what will fucking happen if they don't, if they continue to do this, how much we can outrage over it. We're going to also do a roll call that we review some of the different tactics and different things that involve swarms that are not specific separatist that come to mind, that are like M3As, Nash Windrider, Malorus, squad tactics, that type of a thing. And then we're also going to do a system malfunction, kind of break down a Sloan swarm a little bit, but we're going to take it in a little bit of a different direction where there's so many different options that you can have in Empire, but there's only really 3 ships that you can really run this on. So we're going to kind of break those down and show you what the classic build, some weird other builds that you may see on non-popular tables, or give you something kind of fun to take to your little local there if you have Empire. With that being said, why don't we bring in my favorite co-host, Charles and Matt. How are you guys doing tonight, sirs?
Doing all right, man. How are you?
Good, good. What we are going to do is, I think Charles is either frozen or concentrating very hard on his computer, one of the two. So tonight we have an amazing night. What I wanted to kind of do to start out with first is to talk through the XTC stuff. So we've been streaming XTC streams for the last, I don't know, pretty much the last 2 to 3 weeks nonstop. So we've had games every night. They are officially past round 7, so they are into finals. So we are putting our name in to try to pick up some of the streams to see what can happen and how many streams. The problem is there's so many streamers. I don't know if we're going to get any final end-game streams or not. So we will kind of see how that goes and break it down from there. I'm hoping we'll get a few games, but we will see. With that being said, the other announcement I kind of wanted to make is if you're new to the stream, make sure you go ahead and welcome Psych7J or J7. Make sure you go ahead and hit the follow button right on there and subscribe if you have an Amazon. We have a couple of new things. One is, we're going to put this here in the chat. If you catch Charles anytime during a show or any stream, you could type in the chat, !dad joke jail. And that will put Charles in a timeout from telling dad jokes for the next 10 minutes. And yes, you can hold it to it, because here's the deal. Charles is committed that anybody who catches him telling a dad joke during his jail time is allowed to pick the squad he has to fly for the next couple of weeks. And on top of that, the best part about this is Charles is going to be able to do this. And then on top of what he's going to have to do is, if you want, you have to be a little flexible because of time frames. We can get you and Charles on a stream in either Matt or I'll contact me or comment, and you can actually fly whatever you want. And you can pick you can pick his list. That's the best part of that. You're going to pick the list. You're going to give him something. You can't give him something completely poop. Like, you can't just put a TIE Defender and nothing else on there and just say, well, I'm going to give a fully loaded TIE Defender. But you will be able to do some of those things.
They don't get to pick my list. They get to pick my faction. No. I'm willing to hamstring myself, but not that much. Come on now.
Okay. All right.
I'm still on board. I'm still on board for you picking his whole list. Honestly, I mean, really, why not?
All right. So you don't get to pick the list, but you get to pick the faction Charles has to play against you live right on our stream here on Planning Phase Syndicate. Without that, we are working towards doing some more live streams during the week. So depending on what happens with XTC, we are going to start kind of a local series. So anybody that wants to join and wants to play one of the hosts on the stream, we're going to pick another day, and we're going to do a couple of games during that day. We're also looking, if you are in a league and you have league games and things like that, we will be able to we're going to create a channel in our Discord for stream requests. And it's not like GSP. I'm not coming to your hometown. I'm not that good. Right? If you want somebody to come to your hometown and actually stream an in-person event, call GSP. They're better at that. But if you want your game streamed, if you are in Kyber Cup or something like that, or there's going to be a tournament where you're like, hey, nobody's streaming for this tournament. I would like my game stream or something like that. We're going to set something up where you can message us. Again, you've seen some of the quality. We're decently good at it, but we're kind of looking for some local people that says, hey, we want to be able to play on stream, either some of our matches, or we're looking to be able to play on stream to say, maybe at some point we'll have some sort of a mini league too, kind of like Nickel City does. I am going to reach out to him to talk to him today. There is a possibility maybe we'll start streaming some of their ladder games too when he's not streaming them. So, all right. With that being said, do either of you guys have any announcements? Want to talk about your lives? Anything fun that happened to you?
My lives, but we had a discussion today during our XTC game, and we made a comment. I did some research, and found out that according to the Tales of Star Wars comic book, there was a Force-sensitive droid in the Star Wars universe, and no one knew about it until the story was released. So, little history lesson for you guys. Apparently, when Obi-Wan first came to Tatooine, he felt a Force user but couldn't find them. At the same time, there was a droid serving drinks at Jabba's palace, dropped a drink, used the Force to save the drink, and then serve it to Jabba. No one noticed. That droid's call letters were R5D4. For those of you who know where this is going, get ready. Apparently, R5D4 used the Force to take off his restraining bolt, then mind-tricked Gamorrean guards to get out of Jabba's palace. While wandering the deserts of Tatooine, he was picked up by a sandcrawler. Then, during the time that he was going to be sold to Owen Lars and Luke Skywalker, had a vision in the Force of what would happen if that would succeed and the failure that would be met with the rebellion, and instead used the Force to blow his motivator so that Luke would have to buy R2-D2 in addition to C-3PO, thus saving the rebellion and allowing for 9 movies to be made in his honor. So we really owe everything that we have in the Star Wars universe to a single Force-sensitive robot, which is R5D4. And if you think I'm making all of this up, I promise I'm not.
That does sound very, very Star Warsy. Like the whole thing. That whole thing just sounds like pretty much that's Star Wars right there in a nutshell.
It was Skippy the robot Jedi.
Skippy. Psych. I would say Psych.
Psych J knows. Psych J knows.
Yep, he's already on there.
So Charles, you know what that says? What that means is between you and Matt, you guys got to come up with a meme. I need a meme, and I want a little Skippy meme, and we're gonna maybe we'll add it as something where you can spend some of your credits to do play it in the chat or something. I don't know. Let's create a mini meme. That's what I say.
Wait, I just have to double check. Then that means that we owe this podcast to Skippy, the peanut butter, right? Because we all grew up on Skippy.
No, I didn't. I never had Skippy. My parents bought off-brand stuff.
Another thing that happened over our streams, and we got to figure out how to do this. So number one, we need an alt art for Count Dooku that has Saruman the White on it, because
I saw like a thing where it's like half and half recently.
Yep, I found that on Etsy. Yes, and then Chris, what was the other one we came up with today that we needed?
Was it the same actor that played that guy? I don't remember.
Yeah, Christopher Lee played Count Dooku and Saruman the White. I'm gonna have to rewatch today's game because it was a great idea that we came up with during it for a second alt art, and I can't remember what it was now.
Just remember, Charles, I come up with a lot of good alt art ideas and a lot of good ideas, so sometimes I don't remember all of them. There's just so many of them.
Fair enough.
Right. He's just a fountain of good ideas. Like
no, the other thing you were going to do is you guys got to do is figure out what you're going to do for me for Torkel Mux. There you go. Every time Chris mentions Torkel Mux without unjustified thing. And by the way, you can now
I like that one.
Use Torkel Mux for Tor. You can type it in the chat. Torkel Mux. And you'll get my personal opinion on Torkel Mux. I use it every time somebody plays Torkel Mux. We did that on stream earlier this week too. Where we actually had a list that had Torkel Mux on it, and Charles was like, I bet you like commenting on this stream, and I was like, I hope Torkel Mux loses. That's all I gotta say. I'm rooting for the other team only because I cannot stand Torkel Mux. Anyway, All right, so we've digressed enough. We're like
Wait a
10
second.
minutes in.
Did you already bring up Torkel Mux?
I did.
I think at this point it's more like an OCD. Like he can't be part of a Star Wars podcast in any shape or form
Right.
without at least mentioning Torkel Mux one time.
Yeah, you had me on
getting the shakes.
You
It gets the
get
shakes.
Yeah, I tell you what, get me on another podcast. I will make that a thing every time anybody wants to bring me on. We have an ace player. Yes, PBR Pan. It's not as much the ace player. I mean, yeah, I don't mind him against swarms. But I don't. I do not like it when he takes my aces away. I will tell you that. I will 100% hate that. Cannot stand that. Anyway,
Sad Panda.
sad
Aw.
Panda. Well, and PBR Panda actually spawned a 15 to 20 minute discussion on what whiskey Chris likes too. So, by the way, just so you know, so PBR Panda is legendary in that aspect. I don't remember what stream that was from, but I think it was a late night stream that we did. That
I need to
that
know
was.
where in the Midwest PBR Panda is from, because he started that sentence with "ope," and that is a word that only people from the Midwest use. I need to know where he's from. So when this catches up on the stream, I need to know where in the Midwest you're from, PBR Panda.
I say
All right.
it's like almost no. Yeah.
All right. So why don't let's? I guess we can bring in. I guess I'm jumping the gun, bringing TTS in too early. Why don't we start and talk about swarms a little bit, right? So the reason we named this episode after clankers is because that's the famous term that Rex basically starts calling them, and they use it as an unrunning gag throughout the show. And so what I wanted to do is B1 series battle droids. So all of this kind of starts, right? I know Trade Federation drones are not battle droids, but they're all part of the same thing. Droids essentially are clankers, tinnies, battle droids, B1s, blah, 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 blah. And they're used by, the specific company that created them, right? And the Techno Union later comes into this whole thing. And then essentially what they are is they're flimsy design, they're easy to destroy, and they are only truly successful in large numbers. And so when we talk about I guess this is what excites Chris, right? About, X-Wing, right? One of the big things that I really like about X-Wing is the pure fact that we can now have different types of wing conditions. So there's different ways. You don't just point shoot. It's not just that. You have your aces like we talked about. We have swarms, which is, my personal favorite. And, we have all these other different things, right? And so that's the big thing here is when I first started this game, I didn't know how to play some of these different types of lists. So I started out playing swarms because that was what I struggled with losing constantly. And in fairness, I had a bunch of freaking TIE fighters, like the lot that Matt and I bought. We just had TIE fighters coming out of rear end. So we could run mini swarms with TIE fighters. We didn't know what else to do because we only had, 2 factions at first and really only one.
A little bit of Scum and
Empire.
Pretty much all fire and like every TIE fighter that ever was made, it seemed like.
Yeah, whatever that lot was, they just gave us TIE fighter after TIE fighter after TIE fighter. It was just like crazy, and we got a really good deal on that lot. Actually, that was the best find Matt had of 2020. There you go. Out of everything that we've done, that was the best thing that ever came out of that. Anyway, so long story short is I had this stuff to be able to play, and on top of that, it was like, oh, I want to learn how to beat these things because a lot of people complained about having to fly against them. Charles is one of them. Charles has complained more than one time to me that he does not like to fly against swarms all the time. And we had a discussion, a pretty open discussion last week where we debated the points cost and how swarms actually interact. So we're not going to rehash that tonight because in fairness, the two fellows here are the one that gave me the segment. I was kind of surprised, because I was pretty passionate last week, but hey. So the first thing that I usually talk about when we talk about swarms, right, is obstacle placement, that type of a thing. And I think a lot of it depends on what your opponent brings. If your opponent is bringing, like gas clouds, it's a lot different than if they're bringing rocks or debris. And so depending on the type of list you're going to be flying against, honestly, is really the bigger difference here in what you're going to have to play against. So for this exercise, I'm not going to put any of these in, but these do make a difference because again, I guess I got to change that to 2 or something. So if you have no initiative, and usually with swarms, I usually kit mine out to hit 200 points or as much as I can, right? That is exactly what I like to do is kit them out because they're all going to die. They're just going to die. That's what they do. These things just die consistently, hopefully. unless you're Matt, and when you roll no red dice, and then you tell me, well, Chris, my dice suck, and it's like, yeah, your dice suck. You should be taking at least one of these out every round, if not two. And Matt, definitely, then that becomes a bad day.
I was gonna say, I think half the problem is they don't die consistently, and that's why nobody likes them.
Yep.
They
That is
do
my
die.
problem with them.
They do kind of. Anyway, that's a discussion for last week. So, the idea here is that if you don't get the initiative, you always bring your rocks. You can bring debris because you can actually land on debris as well. And so the nice thing about it is it gives you kind of that option. So if seismics become part of the meta again, and in fairness, if they up thermal detonators in cost, seismics might become more popular, in fairness, because we saw, like today, Charles and I saw a list. What was it? It was a separatist list that had seismics and trajectory simulator in it, and it was more valuable for that list to be able to get rid of some of the rocks because there was not a bunch of droids flying around. They were using Zam and Grievous. So for them, getting rid of some of the rocks was extremely important. And so the idea is, though, is if rocks ever become not part of the meta or whatever, then you could have your debris. Debris are always nice because they are guaranteed stress. You can land on them. You don't have to take the damage because of your struck value. With that being
Also
said,
my favorite kind of cheese.
What's your favorite kind of cheese?
Debris.
Debris. Oh,
Oh,
somebody put him in jail.
But
Somebody put him in jail.
oh my
Oh my
goodness!
That's horrible. Charles.
Wow.
That's a bad dad joke too. That's not even a good dad joke. That's like the bad kind.
Yeah, I think you're like, we're waiting for that. You're like, wait a second, he might say debris. Wait for it.
Anyway, so either which way, so if you don't get the first obstacle placement, you got to watch what is your opponent going to do, right? So in your world, if I'm running 8 droids, I want to be able to put my obstacles closer to the center over here. I want to be able to have kind of a different area where I can land on them and rotate and kill people. So a lot of times what'll happen is somebody will put a gas cloud right in the middle to say, no, not for you. Or they'll try and say, hey, why don't we take an hourglass format, right? And we're going to put a rock here. Because that means my droid can't even do a 5 straight onto that thing in any way, shape, or form. It takes at least 2 moves to get onto there. So if you're able to place the first rock, honestly, my favorite spot is right here. It gives you a couple of turns. The other option is you can start placing them towards your corner. So if your strategy is...
Just real quick, by right here, you're talking about board center, correct?
I'm sorry. Yes, I gotta be better at that. Yes. So the first placement I like is closer to the center. I usually will go a little bit to the left of center. Or depending on the list that they have. So like if they have a Bosk list, I'm gonna go just a little bit to the left of center, not all the way to the edge of the what do they call that? It's not the border, but the edge of the legal play area that you can move your obstacles in. What do they call that stupid line?
So it's you're talking about the two
line
range
Yes.
area.
Yep.
Are you saying like you place it like in the center-ish of the board at like 3? Like, what are you saying, Chris? Maybe be a little bit more descriptive.
Like dead center of the board.
Yeah, like I will place it dead center of the board or just to the left of dead center of the board a couple of inches. Like if I have it my way, I would like to see 2 of them dead center in the board, basically a little offset like that. And so now I've got one, both of them are in the center. They both have the one range, that fits between them. I don't know if I can turn. Yep. So just enough so there's a one range so I could fit a ship through there. A small ship can go through there. I want to shut that lane down per se because I want to take my droids and I'm going to place this one on the rock and I want to be able to rotate it because the way the droids work is you get 2 moves when you land on a rock. You get to either rotate your next turn to one of the 3 directions or 2 directions, left, right, that's it. Or you get to stay where you are, or you could do a 2 straight off there. So it's a little bit like chess because you got to think of where your other opponent's coming in at. That's a big thing. Where your opponent comes in at is pretty important because what'll happen is that opponent, and I'm going to put it coming in over here, just north of the rock coming at me. If my droid is on the actual rock, right, and he's okay, now I got to turn the stupid thing around, and they're coming at me like this. This now gives me the option to stay put and then barrel roll for a block. It'll be a little farther of a barrel roll, I'm sure, but I would be able to barrel roll. And then that means when this ship coming at me goes second to move, it's going to run into me, lose its action. Yes, I won't get to shoot at it, but it's not going to get its action. And if I'm smart and I have all my other droids similarly placed behind him, I've now got all droids, all modified, able to take shots. The other reason I like my rock placement right there is because when I rotate, and we're going to go ahead and put a firing arc, I am able to shoot a huge range. So if your opponent is really close to you, within range, I don't know, one of you, it can get out of your arc. That's true. If your opponent is farther out, because they're saying, hey, I want to stay away from this droid because I know this droid's got a Discord missile, by rotating, it means they have to do a really fast maneuver to be able to get out of my arc. Even if it's range 2 or 3 and I only get 2 dice, it's still a shot I get to take. So that's kind of the droid placement, or rock placement. I think
I
I
have a question. You mentioned something, and I just want to clarify, because as a primarily scum player, being able to pick the brain of someone who is not primarily a scum player gives me valuable intel. So you mentioned at the beginning that you place a rock dead center if you can, unless they're flying Bosk, at which point you will offset from the center, either left or right. What is your thought process behind why you're offsetting a rock to the left or offsetting a rock to the right, simply because of that one ship?
So, because the way for somebody like Bosk or somebody that's a large base, it means they cannot fly through there very easily. It takes away the larger ship's maneuverability to get in close and steal my droid off the board before I can shoot you. Essentially, that's what it is. Because if I have a rock, just one rock in the center, you're able to fly on either side of it, Charles. So you can come just to the left of that. And I guess should have spawned a big ship. I guess I didn't do that. It would make a little more sense on screen. But your big ship is going to be able to circle around that rock. For example, Bosk has 3 hards, and Bosk can 3 hard that crap all day long, and he's got a 180R. So that dude doesn't got to worry about too much, right? So the other reason, Charles, there's 2 reasons. Well, the other reason you can do a little bit more of an offset, so it's center offset with just that one space in between, is because then you can split your squad up. So, for example, somebody that flies a Kylo list typically doesn't run Kylo right next to the rest of their squad, right? They just don't.
Right. No, he tends to be off by himself for sure.
Yes. So when I do my setup, I can spend my time in my formation a little bit more spaced apart. Then that allows me to be able to set up on both sides of the rock for first engagement. And again, folks, this is meant for first engagement typically. Typically, I want to be able to get off my discords, and I want to be able to try to take a ship off the board or half a ship in round 1. That is the ultimate goal with that.
And PBR Panda says that based on your strategic rock placement, he would love to see someone bring Tobias Beckett in just to mess with you.
All right, hey, PBR
Also,
Panda, you are correct. That would screw everything up.
Also, I've heard this being referred to as a nest. Is that what you're talking about, Chris? It's kind of like building a nest, like where it's like multiple rocks, if you can, like in a triangle or something like that, very close to one another. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Creating a nest helps you be able to not have to move. So here's what the droids do. When you land on that rock, your card, essentially, your struts allow you to be able to rotate, stay put, and it's all white actions. Actually, it's all blue actions. I'm sorry. It's a blue action. So if you were stressed from the time before, it doesn't matter. It's inconsequential, right? If you get panic pilot, it takes one of those away. And so the idea behind it is you're always able every time to be able to take your calculate token or a target lock. You can kind of, depending on if you're flying Factoid, drones or Techno Union bombers, those 2 things like target locks better, right? Because they usually are missile focused. And that's actually kind of the thing. You could take, and we're not going to go through this today, but you could, if you had a Techno Union bomber, you can put them on the rock, right? And they're there. They got missiles. They got bombs that poop out the back, So it just kind of depends on what your thing is. So with a classic 8-ship swarm like this, that's what I'm looking for. And again, this doesn't obviously apply to anything that can't land on rocks. If you can't land on rocks, you obviously do not want to do this. This is really a CIS, swarm tactic. Some of the other things that you can do too is if your opponent is like, well, screw you, I'm going to, place something here so you can't have the center of the board themselves, you can place your rocks closer to the bottom of your legalized playfield. You don't want to go all the way down to that 2 measure, but you could go, usually it's a 3. It's roughly a 3, I think. And that's also a good spot. Now, the difference is you got to play cagey. And so you're going to have to take your drone, right? And they're going to have to do maneuvers where they barrel roll, come back. And we had actually an N3A swarm. Now, they can't land on rocks, but we had an N3A swarm that we actually saw do this, start on this side, on the right side of the board with their 7 ships, move all the way to the left side of the board and come around some rocks and stay in formation. And it took them, I don't know, like 8 turns to do this. And they did it on purpose, right? Because they're forcing their opponent to come to them. That is another tactic when we talk about formation flying now, which is kind of what we're moving into, is the formation flying. You want to be able to do these things to get your opponent to come to you. Now, I will tell you, and you can ask Matt this, I am somewhat of an aggressive player, so I am not usually waiting for Matt to come to me half the time. That is an impatient, unskilled technique I have. I should be forcing Matt to come to me, or whoever it is. Now, I can tell you if Matt flies V1s in there, Matt's coming in pretty hard and aggressive because he wants to get those prockets lined up before I get on those rocks and get discords. He wants to eliminate as many ships as he can with his prockets. But again, that's a unique setup there. So now we talk about formation flying, right? And I guess we can go ahead and throw some rocks out on the board. We'll just throw.
So basically, from what I hear there, Chris, is you're basically saying you'd like to keep your swarm in its formation, as opposed to pushing it out or separating it out more than you'd like it to be in general. So being aggressive isn't necessarily the way to go. Okay.
No, it's not. And usually it's just it's a Chris thing, right?
Well, I don't know. Those things, you shove those down people's throat, they have a tendency to pop things. So, that's good.
Yep. So now you talk about there's a couple of different types of formations. You can set up your 4 and 4. And what you do is you would take 4, and then again, it depends on how you want. You could fly 4 in 2 different blocks, essentially. So what I'm doing is I'm setting up 2 ships next to each other, and then 2 ships directly behind each other. And I think I lost a ship. Oh, yeah, there it is. There's green. We're going to put green backwards because that's kind of cool.
So, Chris, can I ask a question as a non-swarm player?
Yep.
So something that I have done in the past is, and I'm going to do the best I can to describe this for the people that are watching this later on YouTube or listening without any video input. When I set up ships, something that I learned a long time ago in 1.0 is that rather than setting them up in cube formations where you have 4 corners of a cube essentially, is to offset your front and back line. Because having them offset means that they don't have to adjust the speed of their maneuvers in order to maintain the formation while flying. So utilizing your nubs and the exterior plastic of your bases to line your ships up in a kind of like an offset step formation. How do you feel about that as a swarm player?
That's how I almost always set them up now. And that because it allows me to be able to do my banks, right? So if you are going to not do banks, and again, these droids are designed to not do banks very often, so well, I don't know. I wonder if I bring this up, if it'll actually display it. Yep, it does.
Because they like to hold on to their money?
Ooh, was it 10 minutes? Was it 10 minutes? We had dad joke jail. We had dad joke jail.
No, nobody put him in jail, so it doesn't matter.
It was at 9:17.
You got to actually put it in the chat to put.
No. Psych J did.
Psych J did. It just didn't trigger the script for whatever reason.
Oh, it's all going to be lowercase.
Already in. It was all lowercase. It was probably already in.
We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. We'll solve that problem in a minute because I can't see the chat to be able to look at it. So if you look, you can see the dial here, right? And so too hard are all blue for droids, right? So when a droid is stressed, there's a pretty good obvious idea that they're going to they're probably going to do a 2 hard or a 2 straight or a 3 straight or a 4 straight. They don't have very many blues for the most part. Now the reason I don't care as much about setting it offset is because only the 2 banks are honestly the only they're white. These 3 banks are hard. They're red. They are not something I do almost ever unless it's like a necessity for blocks or things like that. Because then I don't get to take actions. And that is a big issue with that whole thing. Right. And so offsetting it though, so if you're running M3As, you want to offset. That's 100%. You want to run FO swarm, you want to do the offset. So the offset, like Charles was saying, is essentially you could depending on how far away you want them. You would typically just place your back nub a little bit farther. So it's center. This is hard to do on this angle. So it's center of that other one. Or if you want to go for a little bit more spread out to cover more area, you can actually put your full body of your droid all the way to the bottom right. So you're going to have one droid that'll sit at the top of your template. The next droid is going to be back right behind it, but all the way to the right. That way it'll always clear. And you'll be able to create a larger shooting area. But on the opposite side of that, you will also lose your fire control power. And then not the card fire control systems, the actual fire control. When you space them out more, if you are closer in, all your droids will not get the same shot on the same ship. So that's kind of the pros and cons, right? Because your goal, right, is to be able to put them together. Now, I will tell you though, and all of these guys are driving me nuts. They're all in the same area. Let's get them out of the way. Come on, Green. Of course, I bet Green locked. Green, did you lock yourself? It is locked.
Roger.
Roger. All right, I allow that.
You know it.
One I allow. That's not a dad joke. I like that joke. Sorry.
That's just a Star Wars joke.
It's just a Star Wars joke. All right, so the opposite, the other opposite thing of this is true. So if you were to do a barrel roll, right? And this is the big idea here is by spacing them out farther, you can actually reline these back up by doing barrel roll and all the way to the back. So if Red goes, 1, 2 forward, because that's all he can do. And he's, I guess I should block these in place, right? Then he comes in, does the 2 forward. He can then barrel roll to the back. And then it would be able to put him right behind the other one. So being able to space them out like that gives you more options. It will, if you go in like that, it will take away your ability to focus fire on a smaller ship. But again, if you're going against Bosk, and if you keep him like that, you're probably going to always get shots on Bosk until he goes around you. And Bosk wants you in his front arc anyway, because he wants to be able to get you at range 1 so he can eat 1 ship a churn. And when he has Sam, 2 ships a churn. Guaranteed. It's almost always guaranteed. I don't care what anyone says.
All right. On the first one. Only one on the first time out. Jeepers creepers.
Well, not
then
when
the
you
next
do
one, yes.
Not if you put Jabba. Jabba regenerates them. God, I love that list. Now we're going to go down to
Jabba regenerates. Wait a second. Jabba regenerates Sam?
He can, yeah. Yes.
It has to be an illicit upgrade. Jabba recharges an illicit upgrade, not Zam. You use Jabba.
Sure? Okay, so then
I'm relatively certain that's the.
All right, so you can't recharge Zam. Fine.
Seconds.
Fine, you can't recharge Zam, but you can shoot him with Dengar and that stupid RK5 droid. There you go.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, Chris. The second shot, he'll recharge and can double tap, but just not the first.
And maybe that's yeah, you're right, because I think that's what Charles did. Charles recharged his Zam when we played. That's what he did with his Tirani or whatever. I don't remember what ship you used, but.
Yeah, because I used Tirani with cluster missiles and had the R5TK to target a friendly, and then I was able to fire and then use munitions failsafe to stop the dice, so no damage was dealt. But because he defended, he still gets to recharge the charge.
Definitely working as intended there. Definitely working as intended.
That's what Scum does. We apply the rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, you bend the rules, my friend.
I was just
like a separatist player. All right. So that's kind of the formation, right? You know, there's
Only with
now
more
you gotta,
class.
yeah, there's no more class. The difference though with this is the discussion of, right, here, what do you do if you have to break up your squad? Now you're kind of getting into like a little muddy field, and I don't want to spend very long on this because I don't really think it's. I think that could be a whole episode of what do you do when you have to break your squad up, right? That's a whole different discussion. But breaking the squad up typically will mean that once you're through that initial engagement, you have to break it up, and you are okay with breaking it up if you are able to get blocked. So I like to block people. If you play against me and I'm playing a droid swarm, there's a probability I will go for blocks to stop you getting mods over optimal shots, right? Even if it means that I have a droid that gets no shots that round, and you can ask Matt or Charles this, I spend a lot of time working towards blocks. I will not tell you that is the only way to do this. I will not tell you that is the best way to do this. I will tell you I've had a lot of success at it being able to block and stop other players, especially aces.
Well, I mean, that's why they say I1 is an advantage, right? So there you go. That's the feature.
Yes, I don't disagree with you, and I go for the blocks with them more times than I spend, saying, "Oh, I just want optimal shots," and it's a little, again, a more aggressive strategy. It's where I probably have lost some of my games because of that, but that is the style I play when I play droids. So when you talk about breaking up your swarm or your squad, whatever you want to talk about, and again, this relates to all of them. Once you have that first volley and you know that you can't keep them all together, one or two of them being blockers is a good idea. And M3A swarms are very good at this to some extent, because if they're all lined up against you, they got a little bit more maneuverability than some of these droids do. They could take different upgrades than these droids can. They have auto blasters, huge one on an M3A swarm, right? Auto blasters is big. If you're flying against, like a Goron bump swarm, I guess that's not really a swarm, is it? That's not really a swarm. If you're flying against a Sloan swarm of some sort, they're able to have discipline. They can use that. So even after they do their things, you take one of them out, they're all getting these mods. If they do a 4K, they're not getting a mod though, because they're stressed. But that's the idea behind this. And it's a good thing separatists do not have something called discipline, because that would 100% break those stupid little droids insanely. That would be awful.
It's where, what was it? The party pinata mind link thing. That's where that one jumped up in points recently.
Yes. The TB, I don't remember what the name of it is, but yes, you're right. Yes. One of the tactical droids definitely does that. So the idea behind breaking your squad up is only when you have to focus. So if I have a Jedi coming in on each side of the board, I might want to break my swarm up to go after one of the droid or each one of the Jedis, depending on, again, my health, where I'm at, where they're at. There's a lot of if ands behind that, Now we can move on to Network Calculate. Simple point. Network Calculate is insanely amazing and has proven to win games hands down. So Network Calculate essentially basically means that each droid that shares that trait is allowed to share Calculate tokens. So I can shoot a Discord missile, which requires you to take a Discord or a Calculate token, and that ship is no longer tokenless. Now, they're only calculates, they're not focuses. It's not like I have a Hera that's slinging a focus for every dice. But when you only throw 2 green dice or 2 red dice, you probably don't need a focus all the time anyway. Let's be honest. If you're rolling average, you don't need a focus. You only need to calculate. Hence why, that's what they do. So then we could talk about when we land on rocks. Again, that's not really that big. We talked a little bit about that. That's not super big. If I'm landing on a rock, my goal is to try to land farther back to make you shoot through a rock. You are allowed to have up to 2 droids on a rock at once with your struts. Now, you can only rotate these or go forward. So if you have a droid or if you have a ship coming down the board, we'll just say he's coming down the left. You do your rotate. That way you can get a shot on him. When you leave, you're only going to forward. Now, here's the best part about this. With your struts, because these droids have barrel roll calculate, and Bactoid bombardment drone type droids have barrel roll target lock for stress, and they're all stress, but that's what it is. I can now do my stop, so I know you're going to come in here, and your ship is either going to come in and do a 2 hard or 2-3 right, and it's going to say, hey, I want to meet you here, be here so that I can get a shot on you without you getting a shot on me, or maybe the droid that's sitting behind you or on the side of the rock, right? Want to do that. Kind of crazy because usually I have a bunch of droids right here, but if they did do that and they were going to come in, my red droid who moves first can do my blue stop, barrel roll, and calculate for stress. Now my struts stay open, which means I cannot land on a rock next turn. I have to complete a real maneuver to take my struts off the rock. If I do that, then that's fine. Typically, when you're doing that, it's a block. You're trying to set up a block, or what you're trying to do is outmaneuver that other ship. So if that other ship, instead of going to like a 3 hard, goes a 3 straight, you're still getting a shot. Now you're going to force them to use their boost or barrel roll or something to get out of your range. And then next turn, this droid's just going to 2 hard right around that rock. So I'm still probably going to get a shot. If I don't get a shot this turn, I'm going to force you to run, and you're not going to get shot. So I'm creating a disadvantage for somebody else. The only other positive thing about the struts and is the barrel roll, right? So if my droid is right here, and I guess maybe we should place it. I guess I should move it first. I'm going to move it back here. Do a 2 forward. Flip my dial. And I guess flip my droid. Now I'm on the rock. And see, if you're watching the stream, you can kind of see how close I am to that edge of the rock, right? So I would still open my struts. Now, when I open my struts, I can perform, if, let's say, you decided to outmaneuver me, and your ship is coming around on the far right side of me. And I'm a little worried that I'm not going to get my Discord missile off, or if I have energy shells, you're going to give me an inopportune shot, and you're going to try to boost the round and get away from me. I can barrel roll onto the other rock, and it doesn't hurt me because my struts are open. I can actually barrel roll right onto that other rock. And I take my my calculate and stress, and now I just hip hopped. So when we go all the way back to the beginning, when I talked about placing those 2 rocks close together, there's a good reason why. Now, I only recently learned about this, I don't know, maybe a month ago. I did not know that either, and for a long time, I used to take damage from doing that. You don't have to. It is 100% legal to be able to barrel roll onto that other rock. And here's the best part. You want to know the best part about this too? My next turn, I'm going to not rotate. I'm going to do a 5 straight. Oh, I can't actually do it. Why did it do that? It should give me the 0 stop. Come on. Well, it doesn't recognize that you're on that rock even though you are. So what you would then do is you'd be able to do your 0 stop, clear your stress, which you wouldn't have that calculate, right? Then I can barrel roll back onto the other rock. So I can hip hop between the 2 rocks if that's what I want to do. That part I think is kind of broken. I'll admit that. Only part I think about
that one bit. That's the only broken part of the whole thing you're going on there. That one little bit there. Huh?
Just that.
Fair enough. Okay. At least Charles admits with the R5TK and like the munitions failsafe and all the other stuff. That's definitely like half cheating. At least he'll admit that.
Okay. Moving past that.
I would like.
No, you
to
don't
see...
like it.
Personally, I don't mind it, right? Because it's what they do. It's their thing. Every ship has its thing. You know what I mean? But I would like to see that if you threw a seismic, that a droid that's attached to a rock that gets blown up by a seismic takes
Immediately
extra
dies.
damage. Either immediately dies or takes an additional damage rather than just the one, and now they're floating in space. That's something I think would balance it out a little bit, because you'd have to build specifically to be able to do that. So
right. Yeah. It's interesting, though. I mean, obviously, yeah, I think the strut's actually a really neat little mechanic. I'm surprised about the rock-to-rock mechanic there, so, hey, learning is fun, but I really do like that they have something different.
The more you know.
Yeah, and there's, again, you know, it goes back to play styles, why people like different things. I like these. I like those HMPs too, and I'll tell you what, people are sleeping on those to some extent. I think those are really good.
Not anymore.
My brain doesn't work the HMP way. I can't do it. I played against one during no. The reason I can't, like, during day, and I'll explain why, because I understand why it doesn't work, and I don't know how to get it around it. I played against an HMP set in Dagobah this weekend. It was 4 base HMPs with a Strainbot HMP. I forget, it was like DBS something or other, but if you were at its bullseye arc, it could give you a strain token. In my mind, with like ships, they are constantly flying forward. Even a Talon roll, your ship is still ready to go forward. With the side slit maneuver, because it violates that, it's no longer forward progress, it's sideways progress. I can't process it in my head. It just does not work for me to remember that your 180 arc gets a 90-degree turn while your ship moves that 90 degrees as well. It's not a rotate, it's not a zero stop, it just changes your direction, and my brain doesn't compute it. I don't like it. I'm not saying it's broken. It's definitely beatable if you can wrap your head around it and be able to plan for it. And it's no different than the bendy decloak that Echo can do, or the bendy barrel rolls that the Star Viper can do. I'm, again, nothing against it. There's nothing wrong with it. My brain just doesn't work that way. Every time I have faced an HMP in any facet, I've lost that game. It just, my brain does not compute.
Agreed.
Yeah. No, and I don't disagree with you, Charles, actually, at all. Because there's certain ships I don't fly for the exact same reason. You know, there is a lot of I have a harder time with like ETAs or something I have to work on. That's a downfall of mine, because I play too aggressively typically for that. Either which way. Now let's move on to kind of, and I guess I don't want to spend too much more time. We've already talked a lot about droids. I've had 48 minutes, and I don't think we have too much more to really go. So those barrel rolls are a really cool mechanic that not a lot of people know about, right? Another mechanic that kind of goes into it is essentially your discords will shoot your calculate, but don't worry, because your friends have all your other calculates, right? Not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. The big thing, though, to remember is your maneuver, your opponent's turnaround maneuvers. The biggest issue I have is always remembering those turnaround maneuvers. With Bosk, I ain't got to worry about that, right? With a fire spray, I do. Anything that has a dual arc, or anything that has a rotating arc, or anything that can move around and outmaneuver me, I have to, and this is where we talk about breaking that swarm up, I have to be able to cover all the different facets. So the idea here is, like with your droid swarm, is the goal is to get them in a position where they can kind of, shoot all these different areas, and you want to be able to cover the large basis of the board. That's what you really want to do. And so you have to remember those things, because I have had somebody where I've rotated on a rock and somebody 4K'd over me, missed the rock, and off because of that, right? And then I didn't get an opportunity to shoot because I rotated thinking they were going to go around, and instead they just 4K'd basically through, and I got screwed. So, lost that ship. Almost always you lose that bloody ship at that point. It's like the dice gods just say, dumbass. Anyway, so that's a big thing, is watch out for those turnaround maneuvers, and because you are going to get caught off guard by those, and those are very hard to block. Hence why when we talk about the setting up in the initial setup, sometimes people put them in in 2 lines, they move everything over, do the maneuvers to get them into tour lines so that they can then break them up again and float them outside of the board to prevent some of those things. Those are the hardest ones to prevent. Like, I think Asajj, she has like a 4K, right? Falcons have swoops. Like, there you go. Like, those are just some really big ships that have some impressive maneuvers. Go ahead.
I'd say I think that, and then I think the Scimitar also has some pretty good turnarounds and stuff like that. There's a lot of large bases out there definitely have maneuverability.
Yeah, that Scimitar has 2K churns and like swoop. Yeah, like that Scimitar should be better than what it is. It's just not good, but it should be a lot better. It's a lot of fun to fly. It's just not good.
It's not a good ship. Yeah, no. It's too bulky most of the time.
But yes, yeah, I agree with you. That ship could be a lot better.
Looks cool
than
too.
What it is. It does.
And it's got movable things on it.
Yeah, movable wings. Lastly, remember your droids have 1 Ks and 2 Talons in each direction, right? Those are huge. Droids have network calculate. Stress does not affect network calculate. Let me repeat. Stress does not affect network calculate. That is a big thing.
Except for the fact that it prevents you from being able to take a calculate action. But you can still use somebody else's is what you're referring to, correct?
Sorry.
Okay.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, you can't take your calculate action, but you can use somebody else's.
One.
Just one. Yep, just one. But typically you're only throwing 2 dice. You only need one.
Right.
You only
it still is only one. You're still only allowed to use one of somebody else. That is a rule.
Yep. Which is a nice rule, because if you could steal all of them and use them all, that would be horrible. That would be bad.
Yep.
Think about if you could pass a focus to one of these, you could start putting prockets on these. Anyway, so let's move on.
PBR Panda. Was it PBR Panda who called it? What do you call it? Droid Force. I love it.
Droid Force.
Absolutely
yeah, it is.
love it.
Essentially.
Yeah. No,
it is. Exactly. Maybe that's why I like the Jedis. I fly Jedis in Republic as well in the Aethers, right? So all right. So I think that's it for me.
Though, if they did the force cost for calculate on those. Ooh-wee.
I think that's it for me. Next question. Do you guys have any other questions? Anything else that you wanted me to cover? Anything like that?
I think you covered it. It's a lot to break down when you talk about an archetype like that. It's just like if we were to suddenly go into aces or beef lists, things like that. It's a broad brushstroke to try and narrow down to finite hairs. And I think that you did a wonderful job so far, and look forward to continuously learning about swarms, how to break them down, and how to beat them, so that I can at least be somewhat successful at this game periodically.
Yeah. Now I will tell you that these droid swarms are not meta right now, right? At least what you see on my screen, what you saw on my screen, the 8 just droids are not meta. Seekers, not Seeker Swarm. The what I can't remember the name of that stupid. I don't know. There's a
Seer Swarm. A Seer Swarm.
Yeah, thank you. Those aren't very viable right now either. In the meta, again, this show is not specifically for meta things. Right? I hate going into saying meta, not meta, blah 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 blah. If you are trying to do the competitive thing, these are not as competitive as they used to be. They are a lot of fun to run though. And I will tell you, especially right now when we don't have a million in-person events and you have time on TTS to play, the best way to learn how to kill these things, the best way, is to literally fly them yourself. And PBR Panda, Droid Force, and think about Kraken. Kraken is the Moldy Crow of Separatists.
Would you go so far as to say he's the Torkel Mux of Separatists?
Nope. Especially because it's not one ship. Nope. And again, these are very hard. These are hard to play. They are hard to fly. I've only made top cut in one tournament with them. Now we haven't had live tournaments, so in live tournaments it may be a little different. I enjoy running them even in person though. You can ask Matt. He's had to play against droids for more times than he probably cares to. Matt doesn't like droids because he had to play me way too many times. I know. They're not his favorite.
Not my favorite.
No.
Like the first few people I've ever played in person with, which, before, TTS and all that stuff, you're stuck with whatever your local group is, right? So So Chris and then a good friend of ours also was on a droid kick. So basically we had it was droids and then droids and then droids and droids, and I'm just like, apparently this is what I'm going to fight all the time, so I better get used to it. But let me tell you, you started packing 3 gas clouds immediately.
I agree with you on that one. And I think, Matt, some of the that is a problem in locals when you have smaller local group. And it also is a problem when we are not rich enough to buy more than one faction. Now, I will tell you, packed into my kit upstairs, in my kit that we played last time was Django Zam, and it was only because I was playing it for the one of the GSP tournaments. That's the only reason. And yeah, Charlie, you can go all you want, but it was fun. I still like playing it. I don't care what you say. And that comes from my scum play of
double
Eamon Azumi. I used to play Eamon and Boba. That was like the first thing Matt taught me how to play was Eamon Boba. We played Eamon Boba all the time. All the time. That was like a big thing. Not Koshka. We said, screw Koshka. We're only playing Eamon Boba. That's it. Anyway.
Yeah. Another crazy list to play against for all those people who got to play against that in the past. Oy.
So why don't we break it up a little bit? Why don't we jump to, I don't know, why don't we do a what turns my dials? Okay. All right, so in the what turns my dial segment, we're going to have Matt break down overcorrecting points? Is that really what we're going to talk about, Matt?
I mean, that was what I intended to talk about because to me,
I'm just setting you up, Matt.
To me, that's really something that does turn my dials, if you were, is when we start seeing a meta change. As we've been talking a lot about meta, then it is kind of important to notice where there is that difference on what is a meta change. So what changes meta is the points and what those points do. Let's see, a great example. Like for me, the biggest example was the Nantex swarm change that happened a little bit ago. There was a massive points change. What was it, Charles? Was it 10-point drop on those? 8 points? Something ridiculous like that. I think it was 8 points.
On the Nantex?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah, 8 points, I think is what it was. Like, so basically you were able to carry like an extra 3 ships or something like that, or just an extra 2 solid bodies worth of ships on it because of the platform not being used. It's a classic overcorrection, right? Let's see another one. Here's a great. Well, so anyways, that made Nantex just so much more powerful. It made them even just what felt like this oppressive force. It immediately skyrocketed them, that particular ship, not just to tournament play, but it was literally the worst thing. Yeah, it was literally the worst thing you could possibly see was these Nantex nonstop on the board. It was top table. It was multiple of them on top 32s, top 16s. You couldn't move for all these droids, these Nantex storms. It just was a crazy amount. This is a classic example of overcorrecting. I know that they also did something with Luke Skywalker, for instance, as a gunner. Luke Skywalker gunner is like 26 points, like something crazy. Not only to the point of not being played, like, yeah, it's a powerful skill, but really when it comes down to it, is it really that powerful? So I get why he's kind of like in timeout, but still 26 points, a lot of points. So the other one that I did want to talk about, yes, and actually PBR Panda actually nailed it in chat. It is Zam Wessel. Zam Wessel crew is going up, and normally I would be the one who'd advocate for slow, and that's the other thing too. Fine with Nantex going up in points, fine with them coming down in points, fine with anything that happens there. We need to do something that is a little more incremental, right? Especially when they're coming down. Very important when they're coming down in points is to do incremental changes. I get it. No, it's not being seen. I say personally, limit it to like 4 points, right? Or just some sort of percentage of what it is. 8-point reduction is a crazy amount in one time. Now, if you're going up in points, I'm a little more lenient on something like that. Basically, you're making something more restrictive. I get it. If you're seeing, like for instance, a million Nantex out there in the thing, you can immediately snap back to your 8 points and be like, okay, well let's try this again, and then slowly move those points down. Whereas if you overcorrect, especially in the lower direction, I think that you're going to start seeing these major meta changes, and not only are they major, but they are, in my opinion, game breaking. What are your thoughts on
Um, as someone who lived in Michigan for a while, something well most of my life really, something that you generally see is an overcorrection, right? Especially during winter, you'll see someone start to skid one direction, and they immediately jerk their wheel the other way to try and overcorrect and end up in a ditch, right? You have the well-meaning behind it. You have the idea of fixing something that's not working for
Right.
that time. Um, you know what I mean? But it's one of those things where you've got to slow it down a little bit. You've got to take the time to figure out why it's broken and what it's breaking, because
Right.
sometimes a points correction isn't what's needed.
Agreed.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it's the removal of a slot. Sometimes,
Right.
you know what I mean? It's, something else. Like, for instance, Boba. Boba didn't go up in points. Boba's points didn't change at all. That's not what was
Remove the
broken. His
slot.
ability isn't
Right.
broken. His stuff wasn't broken. Giving him a force user made him broken with his
Right.
ability. So what do?
Right.
We take away his ability to use force users, which, by the way, vote for me 2021. And my first action when I become your president will be to remove crew slots from all fire sprays, including CIS fire sprays. Just saying, vote for me.
Yeah.
Well,
So
yeah, and I do, sorry, one second, real quick. Sorry, Chris, didn't mean to interrupt you though. I agreed on incremental changes. I'm just agreeing with PBR Panda and the thing. So there is a difference between overcorrecting and properly correcting. I do think that ZAM is going to need to be a proper correct. So I would be surprised if you would see less than like a doubling in points. So, and I personally agree with that. Like I said, if you're going for overing and changing up, it's a difference between changing down. In my opinion, big difference changing down.
So my opinion on ZAM, and I will go
Sorry, Chris.
I will go a certain place with ZAM. Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to step in front of you. When you look at what ZAM gives you, the double shot, I don't think doubling ZAM's points is enough. I don't think 4 to 8 is enough. When you look at Bistan and you look at the other upgrades that give you the capability to have multiple shots, none of them give you the capability to have an after fire mod added to your ship, especially on low initiative ships. None of them can do that. And Bistan is 10 points, right? You have to commit. If that's something you want on your ship, you give up 10 points. Personally, I think that ZAM is more powerful than 8 points, and I think that it's not an overcorrection. I think it's an alignment. I think that taking ZAM up to a 10-point upgrade puts him in a line with the other crew puts them in an alignment with the other crew that give you that double tap ability. That's my personal opinion on ZAM. Chris?
So to go the two things to tackle, right? One of the things, right, is the overcorrecting of points. And I have two opinions. And I'm the dissenter typically in the group, right? So
Oh, what?
I have two opinions, right? And they go two different ways. I think FFG is not been the best at it. I don't think that the way that they structured some of the testing for points as the most beneficial way. I think that FFG did not invest a lot of time as much as probably would be needed into it. But I also think FFG spends more time on hyperspace stuff than they do on extended. And I could go back to Star Wars Destiny. I played Star Wars Destiny. When we had that, right, you had 2 formats, just like we do here. All tournaments were the current hyperspace tournaments. They were not tournaments that you could run extended stuff in, right? And in Star Wars Destiny, you basically had trilogy, standard, and basically unlimited, which is every card they ever created. And they didn't have the time to go back and correct all these things for extended. They just didn't, at least for that game, or they didn't care to wanted to, even though it was like the top 5 selling card game more than 1 year. Anyway, so to go back to the will AMG do a better job? I believe so, but I also believe they have to listen. They have to listen to people, because the big thing is this community is huge. We have a very big X-Wing player base, huge. The problem I have is that if they don't actually align themselves with it and listen a little bit more, they're going to miss. And that's what FFG did. AMG seems to be more interactive. They seem to be more willing to talk to us to some extent. So I have a high hope. There you go. Hope. I have hope. That's what I have. Now, let's go back to the points thing and the overcorrecting, undercorrecting.
Right.
I agree with you, Zam, right? Zam is undercosted to some extent. Right. What I don't agree with as much as all this overcorrecting of points is that it breaks things so long. And I typically, what it does to me, and maybe this is just me, for me, I feel a bigger challenge, right? Now, I will tell you, when Nantex took down every single online tournament for 3 months straight, you probably have a higher ability. But a lot of times what happens, especially, and I will tell you, I am the same way. This is one of the faults Chris tries to work on. When I lose something, I immediately think something's broken and I need to fix it. When I lose twice to it, Torkoal Mux. And Torkoal Mux is, I'll be honest, it's a joke, right? I don't like running against them. I don't fly them. But in reality, it's just a Chris joke. There you go. It's a Tanner joke. That's all it really is. Like, I don't get tilted anymore when I see Torkoal Mux on the table, unless it's, to get views. Then I'll get tilted all day long. I like views.
Right.
Anyway, so I think we have to be very cautious with the overpoint thing, right? I agree with Matt. I believe Nantex probably were they did not invest enough time analyzing it and testing the repercussions of what it meant. But they also probably didn't think anybody was doing tournament type play, so what did they care? Right. But at the same token, I was the guy that was sitting here telling you all, saying, hey, hold on a second, let's take this as an actual list building challenge, because it's a list building challenge. And for anybody, for example, GSP at any point could have just banned Nantex. At any point, they owned all of the thing. GSP could have made a decision. They didn't. There's a reason they didn't do that. And it's because it's the same way with droids. It forces you to learn a different play style. It forces you a little bit out of your comfort zone. And it forces you to say, okay, hey, maybe there is something that can kill it. Now, people spent 3 months doing it. It didn't work. So we could probably fairly say at this point, they were definitely points adjusted incorrectly. But we should be very cautious.
So two things on that. Yep. Number one, people built specific lists to take down Nantex swarms and were successful in doing so. The problem is you had to get so specialized in what your build was, you couldn't compete against anything else. You were built specifically for dismantling a Nantex swarm. Anything else was something you couldn't handle, and that was something we ran into. I think, personally, and maybe this is an overcorrection, I think that we should have a quarterly points adjustment rather than every 6 months, or what we have now has been almost a year since our last point update. I think quarterly points updates allows us to have 3 months of enjoyment of playing the ships the way they are, maybe a store championship once in-store play continues, and then coming back to it, in 3 months and making multiple minor corrections over very large corrections midway and at the end of the year. Secondly, where I have hope for AMG, where I have faith, if you will, is by and large, FFG was a card game company. If you look at their most successful products, it's their LCGs, it's their CCGs. The majority of it were card games. And that's not a dig. Their card games are amazing. I play the L5R still, even though it's defunct. I play it, and I love that game. But the things that you can do in a card game, the ban lists, the point changes, the erratas, that sort of thing, don't work as well in a minis game because it's such a static environment. Where I have hope is I've watched what AMG has been successful in doing with the Marvel minis game that they have had prior to acquiring the I guess you could say the proprietorship of X-Wing and Legion and things like that. And the community that they built from a game that didn't have a community, what they've done to increase that communication. And realistically, like their first weekend into being part of our community, they did that build challenge where you could have the one upgrade that you added to your list and it would change the way the game played just to see how participation would be. Like that alone gives me hope that our voices don't fall on deaf ears and that the game that we love is being cared for by people who are going to grow to love it as well. So that's my hot take.
I think you're right in that, Charles. I agree with you with the ANG. I'm very hopeful of it. And I agree. You know, and like I said, I don't want to make too big of a deal. I agree with Matt. Yes, there 100% has to be caution. You do. I don't disagree with you, Matt. Actually, like, and I like to be the opposition a little bit sometimes. Um, just because that's my nature. I'm a little bit of an what do they call it? An instigator? No, that's not an instigator.
Yeah,
They call it
that's
something
right.
else.
A devil's advocate.
Sure. There you go.
Instigator works as well.
I'm not doing it to instigate you specifically, brah.
Incitement, maybe.
No, there's another word for it. I don't know. It's too fucking late or too crappy late at night for me to think about these things. Anyway, so and I don't agree with. I'll be honest. I'm more gonna side with Psych J on this. I don't think Zam Crew needs to go up to 10 points. I don't even know if I say 8 points personally. That's just me. I do think it needs a points increase. Yes. But I would say I would be cautious on moving it too far because then you remove that unique mechanic to the meta. And I'll be the first to tell you I am not in favor of Zam Pilot getting a points increase at all. I will
think
tell
Zam
you
Pilot is fine. It's the crew that can be put on any ship that has a crew slot that needs the point increase, not the pilot.
And I don't.
And honestly, to me, it could go anywhere from 8 to 10 points with Zam. I don't see it not being played even at 10 points, guys. I really don't.
I don't.
I mean, that's only a 6-point increase. Really, when it comes down to it, that's only 6 points. And I know that
you
like
see Crack Shot
6.
anymore though. Crack Shot went up 2 points and you don't see it. They doubled it. You don't see
it. Yep. Well, it's because it was always taken in swarms, large numbers.
I was going to say, when you're taking a generic upgrade that can be put on multiple ships in a list, a single point is extrapolated by the number of ships you're trying to put it on. Zam being a single card in a list that can be put into a crew slot, I mean, it's not a broken card. It works. The reason I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second. I apologize. I do not like upgrades or game effects that alter the way the game should be played. And what I mean by that is X-Wing is a game of positioning. X-Wing is a game of rolling dice. And any game effect that encourages you to not roll dice is not something that I find to be an enjoyable experience. If I'm faced with Zam and say I have 4 shots against Zam, and I choose not to take shots against Zam because I'm afraid of what card you've picked or that sort of thing, we're getting away from what the game's core purpose is. If you had Destiny and the core purpose of Destiny is to roll dice, and I had a card that gave you a negative effect for rolling dice, and the negative effect was so strong that you decided to not roll dice, you're taking away from what the purpose of Destiny is while that card is on the field. And I think that things like that can negatively impact overall.
They do have those things, but that's okay.
And I will say
it's different than Zam though.
Right. But that's my soapbox. So
go ahead, Matt.
Well, for me, and I get what you're saying there, Charles, but at the same time, I like that they introduced a new mechanic. And especially to put it on Scum and on Separatist, I mean, I guess, but it's still, mostly you're going to see it on Scum. where you see the ZAM actually being played, it fits with Scum, first and foremost. Obviously, that is a Scum thing. So if it's going to go in a faction, well, Scum seems like the spot it would go. We've talked about all the different things that Scum does that are already kind of half game breaking and half different things. This would not be the first ship you didn't want to shoot at just because there's other ones in this game where you don't shoot because you know it's going to have a negative effect. What is it? Dengar? Isn't it? Yeah, Dengar, right? There are definitely times where you don't shoot Dengar because Dengar retaliates. Fine with that mechanic. Disagree with I think that it will still be played even at 10 points. Even if it's too many points, I still think it's going to get played. Now, is it going to be uber competitive? Are you going to see it in every list? Is it going to make an entire thing with Bosk? Like, that's a question that I'll hold off and see where we get to. But I do see that, and I agree with Chris, it does need a major change. I agree with Charles. We all agree in this, but where it's going to be at. And I would say that if you end up with, quick draw, there's another great one, Psych, thank you. There are multiple ships where it does require you to change how you play. I think, to me, that's kind of some of the flavor of the game itself. And I'm perfectly fine with Zam. Fine with Zam as crew. Fine playing against Zam. I get it. She's there. She's going to be something you play against. Absolutely cool. Just think that there needs to be a little bit more of a change there. I like that they have the card out. I like the mechanic, like Chris says. I like that you have to have the separate cards. It's a little annoying online, but to me, it just needs to move a little bit in how it's played.
Nope, I don't disagree with that, and I think that's a good jumping off point to move into our next segment. I think you're right, man, and I think again all of this goes back to like a caution thing, right? You know, this is a cautionary tale, a cautionary tale, which is funny because this is the only time I think I've ever heard Charles advocate for something that affects Scum that greatly to increase some points that much. This is a first, folks. This is a first. Usually Charles is like, I love Scum so much.
I do. So I have only ever played Scum since playing X-Wing. It has been, I mean, I've dabbled in a few lists here and there, like that I've tried Empire, I've tried Rebel just to get a different thing. Occasionally I play Republic. But as much as I love Scum, I don't love Scum enough that I want it to be negative.
Yep.
I want it to be competitive, but I don't want it to get to the point where like the only faction that's viable is Scum because of the Swiss Army knife of different tools that they can use. Right? I want it to be fun, but I want it to be competitive. I want you to be able to compete against it, and I want it to be equal with other factions. So I'm not saying, oh, Scum's broken, we need to fix Scum, because it's not on the by and large. But what I am saying is when we compare that ability to some things like other have, and I agree with our chat. The chat said that the requirement that Zam has to be able to fire off is a little less consistent than, say, Han Gunner that gives you the left-right, or Bistan that gives you the left-right. And I'll agree with that. It does take a little bit more, figuring out, but none of them give you the ability to have a free target lock as well. We saw today in our stream that we did for XTC that was double fire spray on double fire spray, just how important it was to have the card that gave you the free target lock. It's almost better to take the card that gives you the free target lock than it is to take the card that gives you the double tap. But that being said, you know what I mean? Yes, I am a firm Scum advocate, but I'm a bigger advocate of fair gameplay and enjoyability for a game that I've loved for many, many years.
Fair enough. All right. So let's move on. Let's move on to another thing. Let's do our roll call segment next. All right. So with our roll call segment, Charles is going to break down, and I got the card overlay to work, so I'll bring them up if you want to tell me which ones you want to bring up first. But Charles is going to kind of break down some other swarmy, things that kind of go into swarms, and I don't want to spend hours and hours because we could do a whole nother segment on swarms. If we want to actually talk about swarms again, we can actually talk about non-CIS swarms. I will happily break down other non-CIS swarms. I'll be honest. I love swarms that much.
Right.
We could talk First Order swarms. We could talk, the only swarm you can't really get. Republic doesn't have a swarm faction, really. Torrents aren't very good swarmies.
Well, they kind of do. I say Torrent.
bit.
Torrent's backed up with the.
Warthog.
There's some stuff that could be done there. The problem is nobody owns that many doggone torrents.
That's because the only place you can get them is in that starter pack. So hey, AMG, if you happen to stumble upon our little stream, release swarms in their or release torrents in their own little package so that we can buy them.
Yeah.
So we can have the ship so that we don't have to buy another Aether Sprite that we don't need because we already got 6 of them to try and get enough torrents to have fun. Anyway, on to roll call. I'll start, and we'll just go down the list that's in the doc. I'll start with Nash Windrider. Nash Windrider is an I-2 pilot that is Empire in the Interceptor. Now, I think this is... Nash came in the new pack, right? The new squad pack that the Empire got. And what Nash does is during the engagement phase, after a friendly ship at range 03 is destroyed, if that ship has not engaged yet this phase, you may spend 1 charge. If you do, and it is a refillable charge, so it recharges every turn. If you do, that ship may engage at the current initiative. That's a lot of words, but what it means is if an I-6 ace, like Sunter Fel or Fen Rao, kills one of your I-1 pilots, which is something that aces love to do, if Nash is on the board and you are at 0-3 of Nash, your I-1 engages at I-6 to have simultaneous fire. So Nash allows you to get a shot even if your ship dies. So you always have return fire as long as Nash is on the board. And that works exceedingly well in swarms. I really like this card. I wish we saw more of it in the meta. We don't see a whole lot of it. Occasionally you'll see it pop in there. But it's a really good card, and I really like it a lot. The next that we have is Swarm Tactics. Swarm Tactics was really fun in 1.0. It was different than the way it works here. But in 2.0, at the start of the engagement phase, you can choose 1 friendly ship at range 1. If you do, that ship treats its initiative as equal to yours until the end of round. This works really well in swarms where you can have kind of like a swarm leader mindset. So flying a bunch of TIE fighters with backdraft, or a bunch of TIE fighters with quick draw, or a bunch of TIE fighters with a high initiative TIE fighter. Being able to bounce one of your guys to the front of the line to get an additional shot off with your squad leader, if you will, can be very helpful. Now with this, they fixed the variable point upgrade with this. So depending on what ship you put it on, this can also work in the inverse as well. And I didn't really think about this, but you can also use it to pull a ship down. I don't know why you'd want to do that other than like if you had a ship that was had cloaking device, and you could choose not to cloak at or choose to uncloak before you took your shot, like they did with Rey when they were able to give that cloaking device to Rey, being able to pull someone down to 0 so they're shooting last, and allowing them to stay cloaked for the entire combat round to get the extra evade dice would work. But it is variable based on initiative, so it is 3 points from initiative 0 to initiative 4, and then on initiative 5 it goes up to 4, and on initiative 6 it goes up to 5. So it's a variable card. It's a lot of fun. I don't think I've ever seen it in the meta, whether it was 1.0 or 2.0. It's a good flavor card, but I don't see it in competitive meta, just at least not right now. Maybe I'll eat my words in a couple of months when points change happen, they make it viable. Who knows? But right now, I don't see a whole lot of it. The next one is a card that we see a lot of. This is a card that does something very intriguing in that it can be placed on ships that don't normally have the ability to do what this card can do, i.e., TIE interceptors. The card that I'm talking about is Disciplined. So, with Disciplined, after another friendly ship at range 03 is destroyed, if that ship is limited, meaning it has a little dot in front of its name, so generally it's a named pilot or a unique, or it has the Disciplined upgrade on it, you may perform a target lock action or a barrel roll action. This is great for getting out of shots, allowing you to reposition after you have the perfect information of knowing exactly where your opponent is going to be. But even better, being able to put this on an interceptor that doesn't have a target lock on its upgrade bar. So now it can take an action that it previously couldn't take for 1 point. That's ridiculous. That's just flat out ridiculous. Being able to give a ship that can't take a target lock. And I mean, if you look at, do you know off the top of your head, Chris or Matt, what the point cost for targeting computer is?
3 points.
3 points. So the upgrade that gives you target lock is 2 points more than the upgrade that gives you the ability to take a target lock if somebody dies. Yes, there is a conditional thing there, and that's that you have to lose a ship in order for it to trigger. But in swarms, as Chris so delicately put earlier, that's what they're designed to do. They're designed to lose ships consistently. And so if a ship gets lost consistently and everybody can take a target lock, you can do it. What's the cost on thread tracers? Is that 3 points as well? 4?
2.
2 points. So another card that gives everybody the ability to take a target lock for 1 point more expensive than this card. So for 1 point, this is another one of those that I think needs to be corrected.
Hold on. So I want to can we stop real quick because let's bring up thread tracers. I can't get it to type in my chat for some reason.
All right, I got it.
There it goes. I got it. So Charles, there's a difference between the thread tracers and discipline though. Thread tracers allows you to acquire a lock. Acquiring removes the fact that if you're stressed, you can't. The discipline is an action upgrade. And this is probably where I disagree with a little bit of everybody. I do say discipline probably should go up a tiny bit, but I want to be very cautious though. To example, like if you are stressed, you cannot take it. The ship that you mentioned that uses this, that avoids the 3 point upgrade cost, the targeting computer, is a ship that also usually repositions and does 2 actions in 1 turn and is almost always stressed. Now, you could fix that with sensitive tune controls, actually. And hence, nobody uses sensitive tune controls because you take the action beforehand, then you do the blue maneuver and you don't take that second action as much, right? Because you can't use sensitive tune controls when you're stressed. Sensitive controls, bloody hell, man, bloody hell, I'll tell you. I can't talk tonight. Sensitive controls is a 2 point upgrade. So you compare that with discipline, you're now looking at 3 points. And you have to have 2 slots that fill to take that. So while I agree with you, discipline has been very successful in what it does, you have to be unstressed. V1s do not like to be unstressed, and neither do the Soontir Fellowship.
Interceptors.
They don't like interceptors.
He's more talking about strikers, other ship. Well, yeah, interceptors if you didn't happen to do it, or there. But either way, the TIE Phantom, for instance, could take the lock. It's more that
I'm not saying it needs to come up like 2 points or 3 points or anything like that. 1 point upgrade or 1 point increase in cost on this, taking it from 1 to 2 points, I think is perfectly solid. Just because it's never used on a single ship, it's used more often than not in a swarmy style list. Maybe not a full 6 to 8 ship swarm, but generally a 4 to 5 ship swarm that has some beef behind it. Again, I'm not saying anything's wrong with the card. I think that the ability that it has is amazing, and I think it's great. But I do think it's a little undercosted, my personal opinion. The next card that we're talking about here is basically it's like a. Oh, I didn't know there were 2 pilots. let's extrapolate that. So we'll start with the Malorus in the TIE FO. So at the start of the engagement phase, you can spend a charge and gain a stress. If you do until the end of the round, while you defend or perform an attack, you may change all of your focus results to evade or hit results. So wait a minute, he has glitter stim built in for a charge? How come nobody's running that? That has
Points,
nothing to do
baby.
with
Points.
how many points is Malorus?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's on TIE
Oh,
FO anyway.
38. 38. Anyway, that has nothing to do with this. I just didn't know he was an FO pilot. On to the next. Commander Malorus in the Z class light shuttle. When a friendly ship at range 02 performs a primary attack, before the modified dice step, if it has one or more blank results, that ship must gain a strain token to reroll one blank result if able. This is great in swarms. I did a segment a couple of weeks ago on the power of rerolls, both offensive and defensive. This is just outstanding and fantastic, especially in a swarm. Being able to have 5 ships that take focuses and can reroll their dice almost guarantees 2 to 3 hits, depending on how many dice you're rolling. Super powerful. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. I don't think he's undercosted. The Z shuttle is terrible. It doesn't maneuver well, but it's a lot of fun. At 45 points, I think he's good. I love it for swarms. I'd like to see more of it. We saw a couple of them during XTC, I believe, Chris, and the key to dismantling those lists was taking Malorus off the board as soon as you possibly could. Without taking Malorus off the board, they were super powerful, but the minute that Malorus popped, so did the rest of the list at that point. And then we have... Oh, go ahead.
I say, yes. I mean, yes, you're right. It is the linchpin. I don't think it immediately takes that whole list apart, but not being able to get the rerolls is pretty hardcore. That is pretty hardcore. And that's why what you'll see is you're going to start probably seeing variants of that where people take Malorus, three of these things, and maybe a Kylo or a Hollow or something that gives you a different end game. Because you're right, you lose Malorus, it's a lot harder. It's a lot more uphill battle, especially like we saw in one of our streams. I think he lost Malorus in 2 engagement churns. First engagement, half point, second or almost half point, second engagement, obliterated, just gone.
Yeah, buddy, that was not fun to watch. It was fun to commentate on, but man, that was some sad times. And then the last card that I'll talk about during our roll call is still Commander Malorus, but it's a really interesting card. Maybe you guys can chime in on why we don't see this as much as a crew card, but it's still Commander Malorus. The setup is Commander Malorus face up. While a friendly non-limited ship at range 01 performs a primary attack, that ship may reroll 1 blank result. If it does, and the attack does not hit, you must flip this card. The other side to this card is Commander Malorus Perfected. I don't know why she's perfected on this. I don't know the lore behind it. I'm a Star Wars nerd, but I don't know. Maybe someone in the chat can let me know. But while you perform an attack, if the defender is in your bullseye, you must convert all focus results to hit results and then gain a stress token. If you have 2 or more stress tokens, you suffer 1 damage. So, wow, that's crazy. Maybe that's why people don't use her, because if you still miss after your reroll, which does happen because of dice variance, you lose that reroll ability, and that's not consistent enough to be present in a swarm. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes. I don't foresee that card. I don't know what the points cost on it are, but I've never used it. I see it as kind of a silly thing.
Oh, we might see some drift down on that one. That's interesting.
I kind of dig that. I'd like to see that on a list. See how you can build that into being. Who would you put that on? Could you have a... Dude, Phantoms have a crew slot, don't they?
No, they have a gunner slot.
Gunner slot.
Oh, gunner slot. Okay.
Yeah, it's like Jay has it right. The downside is that the FOs don't have the crew slot.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I mean, it's
she'd be
not
fun
like
on the Hawk.
Hawk. Yeah, I think only the Hawk
But
or I
it's first
suppose
order
like
only.
R2D2 style or bucket. I don't know. Just saying.
Yeah. Ooh, maybe the TIE Whisper and the Bomber if they have a crew slot. That would be fun to see FO get somebody that has a small base crew carrier. I'd like to see that. I don't know enough about the TIE Whisper for FO or the Bomber. I'm super excited for some new ships. Maybe we can get some new Scum stuff finally, so that I can actually start buying ships again. I haven't bought a ship since
Scum stuff. You talking about Zam just came out? Crazy man.
No. Zam came out in a CIS pack. That's not a new ship. That's not a new ship. I have not bought a ship since Scum Han and the Mining Guild tie.
Yeah, that's actually the last Scum ship I just bought was Scum Han.
Well, hold on. I take that back. I take that back. I did buy the Scum Squad pack that had the Hawk and the Y-Wings, but those weren't new. They were re-releases of 1.0 crap. I just bought them because they had...
I'm not going to be sitting here crying for you, buddy. They have so many ships in Scum. So many ships. Poor Resistance and FO, man.
Okay.
They...
All right.
So hold on. Wait a minute.
And CIS, too.
No. Can we...
I'll back away from it. I'll back away. We'll do it on another night.
This is that's a whole segment. We're already at 140. That's a whole nother segment. I don't disagree. Let's have that discussion, but let's not have that discussion today.
I agree.
Okay, let me do it. I want new ships for every faction. All of the ships.
I agree.
So there you go.
I agree wholeheartedly. For me personally, just to walk away from this with as popular as The Mandalorian has been, to not see something for the Scum faction come of that, when we had new stuff for just about every Star Wars movie, new things like that, just seems like a missed mark for me.
Well, but I'd be surprised if there isn't anything coming out for that. Honestly, I mean, I don't know. Who knows?
I mean,
I would be surprised.
Maybe it was Disney's final coup. FFG was getting ready as a last IP to release the Razor Crest, and then Disney went, "Nah, we're gonna blow it up." And then now the Razor Crest is no more. So who knows what the plan was? But that being said, Scum does have a lot of ships. I want something new.
Fair enough. Do you have any more roll call, Charles? Any more scummy?
No, I don't think there's outside of Torkel Mux. I could take your ships down to a 0. That's about it.
All right. I'm not going to take the bait on that. Not taking the bait. All right.
I agree, Psych J. Dave Filoni pilot for the T-65. I'm in. He got an action figure. We need a pilot card. Just saying.
You think so? Okay. Well, what do we have left, folks? We have Sloan stuff. Man,
maybe
forgot we had Sloan. All right. So, yeah, we have Sloan. So here we go. So Sloan is a unique card, right? You know, I think we've heard a lot about it because essentially I want Krennic's shuttle ship too. Yep. And I cannot wait till we get Bad Batch. That will be a fun Lambda ship that we get.
I expect that we're going to start seeing sorry.
Yeah. Well, as long as it takes AMG to frickin' bring these things together, or FFG, it seems like it'll be frickin' another 2 years before we get bad ships. Anyway, so for a Sloan Swarm, there's a couple of unique things, right, that you can do with them. And if my computer will load, hopefully we'll be able to see some of them. But essentially what Sloan says is another friendly ship at range 0 to 3 defends. If it is destroyed, the attacker gains 2 stress tokens. It also says while a friendly ship at range 0 to 3 performs an attack against a stress ship, it may re-roll 1 attack dice. So think of it like that's a Boba effect, right? Charles, that you would we call that the Boba effect? Is that what we call those things? I think that's what we do.
Sure.
I think that is the Boba effect. That's probably just the best word for it. So with that being said, traditionally you see a Decimator that is fully kitted out. I do not know why Yasby does not like to load while I'm streaming. I don't get it. It really irritates the piss out of me. Anyway, so typically what we do is we see the Decimator loadout with Rear Admiral Shermu, and maybe, hey Charles, maybe, or Matt, can you one of you bring up the TTT? That's what we'll do. Just bring up the stupid cards. I was going to show you. I
have Sloan up. What else do you want up, boss?
All right, so bring up Sloan, Darth Vader, BT1, and 000. Essentially, though, what Sloan does is it allows you to kind of take it and you can run 4 TIE fighters with a really fat rack. And what that does is, I don't see TTT up. It's not coming up either. God, do I hate this computer.
000?
We all love a fat rack, just saying.
Somebody put up a dad joke, Gail.
That wasn't a dad joke.
Was that a sexist joke?
Is that was Sloan, Vader, and 000? Is that right? Anything else you wanted?
BT1 gunner.
BT1. Okay.
Anyway, we're gonna move on. With that being said, and I can't get anything to load. There's something eating all my resources for some reason.
No.
Have them all up. Would you like me to read them for you, Chris?
Yeah, go ahead and read Darth Vader, BT1, and 000.
Give me half a second. Okay. So sorry, everybody. Go ahead and start talking for a second. Yeah.
So essentially what the idea behind that list is, right? You know, with it is the fact that Darth Vader, if you're at range, what is Darth Vader's range, Charles? I'm trying to think. It's
0 to 2.
0 to 2. Yep. Essentially, you could spend your force to say, hey, somebody is going to not have a green token, or they're going to choose to take a damage. One of the two. We don't know which, but it's going to be one of the two. Then you have BT1, which essentially says at the start of engagement, you may choose one enemy ship at range 0 to 1. If you do, you gain a calculate token unless they take a stress. Then BT1 allows you to change your hits to crits. Now, that only really affects Rack, right? But Rack hits pretty hard. And so the idea with a Sloan Swarm is the fact that typically you would run, you would be able to run 4 TIE fighters with a fat rack, and then what would happen is you're hoping that somebody either shoots at you or shoots at the TIE fighters. If they shoot at you, your TIE fighters are coming in. They're going to get to mod their shots. You're going to strip the token with Vader, and you're going to be able to go, hey, look at all these other fancy things. And that allows you to essentially create a pretty big kill type box. Now, if you want to go ahead and bring up Dauntless, let's bring up Dauntless, because Dauntless is the other upgrade that you could run with your swarm, right? And Dauntless allows for the fact that after you don't execute a full maneuver, so you're partially executing it, you can perform a white action and then treat it as red. So you still get your damn actions even if you're bumped, which that's pretty scummy to me. You don't usually like that's usually you don't see that in very many factions. That's not a common card. And it's great on your Decimator, right?
Yes,
it's huge.
Yeah. No, it's a big upgrade.
It's a huge Decimator. Huge. Yeah.
And think about
it. The Decimator you're talking about now is 113 points. Just FYI.
It is. It is. Yep, you're right. It is. It forces them to go after that Decimator to get those TIE fighter instead of the TIE fighters, and then you put the TIE fighters in front of you so that the TIE fighters can go, hey, screw you. Yeah. That was a man joke. The TIE fighters say, hey, screw you. You're not going to get as close to Rack as you want to. That type of thing. Now we could kind of move on. So like those are your classic Sloan builds. There is some other things you can do. Think about it. How many crew slots does Sloan have, Matt?
4. Oh, sorry, 3. What do you mean? On the Decimator? 3 crew slots on the Decimator.
Yep. What costs 6 points and has 2 crew slots?
6 points and has 2?
Yeah. And it costs 2 crew slots. Death Troopers.
Oh,
Death Troopers. You want to bring Death Troopers up?
Yeah.
Death Troopers are they're not used, but when we talk about a weird type list, right? You want something different. Any enemy at range 0 to 1 cannot remove stress tokens. So you can ram Sloan directly into their other ships pass off those stress tokens, and here you go. Now, with Death Troopers, you can't run Vader and 000, but you could run one of the other ones. So you can't pass off the stress as easily. It's a lot different of a card, but it is still a really, really, really good card. Now,
gives you more points
can you bring
for
up
your assisting ships.
Yep. Can you bring up Tactical Officer, Seventh Sister? And Seventh Sister, you can take Death Troopers off the board. I like Death Troopers. I'll be honest. I really enjoy them. That is one of my favorite cards to run. Tactical Officer is 6 points, and that allows you to have a white coordinate. Seventh Sister, and this one is almost, I've never seen anybody ever use this crew card. But if an enemy ship is at range 0 to 1, would gain a stress token, you can spend a force to give it a jam token or a tractor token instead. That's pretty big, and I think she's only 9 points. So again, when we want to talk about non-meta stuff, or we want to talk about crazy, weird, chainy stuff, that's what that card is for. And I'll tell you what, I have a goal now to run Seven Sister Crew in some way, shape, or form, because I want to see if I can get these things to trigger to some extent. Tactical Officer is not that big a deal. Now, if you'll bring up ISB Slicer and Fifth Brother, and you can ask Matt, I tried to get this ISB Slicer to work, and it's not meta, man. It's just not meta. But ISB Slicer, during the end phase, when a ship is at range 1 to 2, it cannot remove jam tokens. So here you go. You now have another option to be able to run ISB Slicer with your Seventh Sister. You just need 2 crew slots. Crazy. It's a crazy. And that card's like 4 points. And I think that if this was not just an Imperial only card, that card would be highly played, especially in Scum. Jam tokens are very underutilized in X-Wing right now, and I think that jam, and we see this with false transponder codes. 2 points for false transponder codes, you get it's a free jam. You don't take an action. So I think jamming it can become pretty important. The only reason I brought Fifth Brother up, honestly, is because Fifth Brother is what I would call it's just a way to get a Force Gunner card on your character. That's it.
And you get the crit. That's nice. You can use
Yeah.
the Force for the crit. It's pretty tight.
Yeah.
Especially
I think
if you have Dauntless and Rack.
I think the hard part with the jam action, just to speak on that for a second, the reason false transponder codes is so good is it extends the range that you can jam.
Yep,
jam is normally limited to 0-2, I believe, but false transponder codes gives you the ability to do it as long as you're getting shot at, so it kicks that out to range 3. The hard part with the jam is getting someone into range 2, and then wanting to spend an action to put a jam on rather than taking an offensive action like focus and target lock. I just don't think that. I mean, strategically it can work just like a coordinate or an evade token, but in most games, the 2 actions that we see are focus or target lock because they affect your dice. Jam doesn't really do that. So unless you're already coordinated in a double token, so you have that double mod for your attack and can spend your action on a jam, I just don't see it being very, very effective in comparison to what we have now.
Yep, and I don't disagree with you, Charles. I think that's why. So really the last one, if you want to bring up the Reaper Visor and maybe the Lieutenant Psy from the Lambda, those are really kind of your last 2. So we talk about unconventional Sloan carriers. Visor and Lieutenant Psy, or you could go with Colonel Jendon. Lieutenant Psy gives you those extra, like, I think 4 or 5 points. You have SAI in the Lambda. Those allow you to have bigger swarms, right? So with Rack, you're only getting 2. You got 2. That's it.
Right.
With these 2, you're getting a little bit. The Visor gives you the fact that you can use a coordinate action before you make your maneuver. So if you can dial in whatever you want. It's a stressful maneuver. You can clear it with a blue, Or who cares, right? You're not going to take another action this round at all. So it's like advanced sensors
Well,
buffer coordinate
it's a
only.
white. It's a white coordinate too, Chris. Vizier's action is a white. That's a white coordinate.
Why?
It just says it.
It just says perform a coordinate action. I don't think it's white. We can't hear you, Charles.
You're muted. But I'm pretty sure it's white.
Sorry,
I mean,
sorry. For the purposes of text in a card, if it doesn't specify that it's a red, whatever it is, action, since they don't color code it in there, it's assumed to be a white, even though the coordinate on the card is red.
Oh my god.
No, but yeah,
all right,
that's how I've heard him being run. But yeah,
then it's even easier.
Very cool. Yeah,
you can get rid of Visor. Can you just leave Lieutenant Psy up?
Mm-hmm.
Then we just have Lieutenant Psy. After you perform a coordinate action, if the ship you choose performed an action on your bar, you get to perform that same action. So Lieutenant Psy just gives you the ability to perform, you're coordinating a focus, which is really all you're going to be doing. That's probably it. That's all that you're really going to do. Unless you add a targeting computer to this, and then I guess you would be able to do that. But those are two of the unconventional ones. I mean, and with your Visor, you can run 6 TIE fighters. With Lieutenant Psy, you can run 5. You can run 3 or 4 Saber squadrons with them. It's crazy what you can do when you get rid of Rack. You'll lose some of the potential because Rack has 3 carriers in it, but you'll lose all the other effects of it. And I think that's kind of the largest benefit to that whole thing. So.
But is it better to have a bigger swarm, Chris, or would it be better to have that that beefy piece, better. Or is it more okay? So.
In my opinion, the difference is how you want to play it. Rack has been and has always been pretty big in terms of what you can get for it, right? The difference becomes though is I like to run more ships as a swarm. That's all.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to.
I would agree. Name of the game is stress too with Sloan, so take debris.
All right. So we have, I don't know, what do we have? Our last segment?
So just real quick, Chris, to answer your question, I got a little rules nerdy. I apologize. In the rules reference, under actions, actions are either white or red. After a ship performs or fails a red action, it gains 1 stress. There is a separate bullet point that is if a ship is instructed to perform an action, the action is white unless stated otherwise. So because the card does not state red, it is assumed to be a white.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, cool, huh?
All right. So for our last segment, we have Matt doing a construct the Death Star. What is it, multi-faction? We're doing multi-faction now, aren't we? All right.
I think this most recent one we are, yeah.
Yeah. We already have 2 lists, one and another one. So, Charles, why don't you go ahead and start us out with this?
Let's see if we can make this ship viable by bringing some other people in. So let's start with the Scum ship. I know, big surprise.
Oh my god.
Let's go with the Mist Hunter.
Oh my god, there's one I haven't played in a long time.
Oh,
I actually own one of these.
Too played Mist Hunter.
I have played one. It's just been a while.
What is the name of the actual ship, though, Charles?
It's the G1A, right?
Yeah, the G1A something or other.
Starfighter. G1A Starfighter. All right. And there's only three to choose from.
Psych J says challenge of the week: Swarm Supremacy. TTS matches between the hosts to see who they think has the better swarm.
Oh.
Well, then we shouldn't do multi-faction if we're going to do that. No. We could change it.
We could do it. Let's just go to a swarm. That's fine. We can do a swarm.
All right. What swarm to do? I guess Matt. What
if I personally get to choose, do I get to choose the brand of swarm I'm going to run?
Why don't we do 3 quick swarm builds? Build the swarm you want to run.
Personally, I've had a lot of luck with the V1 swarm actually.
What did you put on it?
For me, It's a TIE Advanced V1. And I'm going to say Baron of the Empire. And I would run it with Prockets personally. And I would run 6 of them. There you go. Easy peasy.
Do I even need to bring it up?
I mean, not really. I don't think so. I mean, the fact, though, now that you can do Disciplined, though, does make me wonder if you should put Disciplined on them, but I still don't think so. I mean, if you're just going to run a generic faction, like, for just running, those ships have a lot of maneuverability. They have the ability to do the linked action, which for me is huge. And if you run 6 of them, you can do some pretty good damage, but the real thing is there's 3 agility really does keep them alive, assuming you can actually roll the dice. That's the key. So yeah, if you're Charles, I would say maybe don't go for a swarm that has a 3 agility. I would suggest a 1 agility swarm for Charles. So, but that's for me. I mean, not for me. That's probably for Chris. Chris has some pretty good dice.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no YV666 swarm meta. So
right.
Yeah, those are not swarms.
Could you imagine that swarming? Okay, so there's mine. God. That one's mine. Easy peasy.
What about you, Chris? What are you going with?
No, I think you got to go next. That's how this works.
I'm building a scum swarm.
Matt, are you just sold on just 6 with Prockets? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, I just thought that they wanted that's a simple swarm that I ran a few times in the past. I mean, is there other things that people can think of? I mean,
no. You can.
For you,
I mean, there's variants of that. I just want to make sure.
There's a lot of them because you could also do the Inquisitors with the
But it's what do you want to
with
run?
the I want to say it's Foresight. 5 Inquisitors with Foresight, also very powerful. Maybe that's one I've never actually tried that. That might not be a bad swarm to try. Maybe I'll go with that. So 5 Inquisitors with Foresight.
5 ships. 5 ships are not a swarm.
Okay, swarm.
How many ships is a swarm then? Just curious.
6 or more.
6 or more? Opinion. Okay. So there you go. Then I don't have another option then.
All right. So you're going to run these with Prockets. Or 6 with Prockets,
why
right?
not? Sure. Okay. It's
Charles,
a solid spot.
Let's go to scum right away. Just solve that.
Might as well just go ahead. You know where I'm going. So 3 fangs. 3 1 fangs.
Oh, yeah. I know this one.
Yep. 1 Mining Guild TIE Fighter.
Hold on. I guess you can go ahead and rattle it off, and then I'll.
Oh, you're good. So 3 I1 fangs, 1 I1 Mining Guild TIE Fighter, and 2 I1 M3As, one of them with tractor beam. Done and done. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Solid list too.
I really do not like. I don't understand. Why does Yasby take so many resources? Is this like a look? Don't
know.
Is this just like a thing?
Might be a thing.
Yeah, I don't understand. Sorry, folks. I don't understand why it does that. So you're gonna run a Mining Guild TIE, right? Yep. You said.
Yep, 1 I1 Mining Guild TIE, 3 fangs, and 2 I1 M3As.
And that puts you at
199, baby.
Yep, one of the M3As has tractor beam. That'll put me at 199 out of 200. I got a 1-point bid. Not that it matters because I'm all I1, so I'm not ever going first.
Well, now I got to build with a 2-point bid to make sure that I can outdo you.
Just wow.
So I think on my world, I think you know what I'm going to. I'm going to obviously run CIS. So the question becomes: is do I run a droid swarm? I probably don't. I probably do a variant of it. The problem I had, so if we're running swarm on swarm, I don't have to worry as much about you taking the ship off the board as easy, like with a Bosk or something like that.
Ooh, what did Psych J share?
Yeah, he's got a Colossal Station Mechanic. So those are the what are those things?
They're the ones that blow up.
Fireballs. The resistance. The resistance. Is it looks like 6 of them.
Yep, 6 of them.
One with
6 of
red
them.
tracers.
Yeah.
Fast.
And 2 of them with advanced slam.
Yeah.
33 points each.
Interesting.
Sliding in
Yeah.
at 198. There's your 2-point bid, Chris.
That's
There
true.
you
What
go.
is man? I don't know how to run those, but what is the
That's a tricky one.
that's
Dead
crazy.
man
That is
switch
actually
on
crazy.
some of them.
That looks
That's
like it'd be a hell of a
fascinating.
lot of fun. That's what that looks like.
That
All
right
well,
there
that's
is
not
the
my
first
typical
one I've
swarm.
seen his toys.
Yeah. So I would be running droids. Obviously.
What? No.
Yeah. And I probably won't do the 8. It'll be 2 tubs and 5 droids.
How many discords?
3.
Uh-huh.
There's no way I'm not gonna run a Discord missile on a droid.
No,
I mean,
I'm not mad at you at all, sir. Use them toys.
It's a kind of mandatory. I will tell you, Discord missiles don't work really well against other swarms. I mean, your M3As, it'll have a little bit bigger teeth into, but it's not going to do poop to mats.
Why would M3As have a barrel roll?
They have a barrel roll. You're right, they do, but that takes their whole action. You have a linked barrel roll, right?
Nope.
So that's the difference. That is the big difference. So you the
2 tubs, 5 vultures. What else you got on there?
Well, we'll have Discord missiles. I don't know. I can't get the thing to load, so it's gonna have
Discord on 3 of the tubs. Or no, sorry, 3 of the drones.
Yep. So essentially, because you're gonna run 3 of those, or 3 of those essentially with the with Discords
on all everything.
What?
Drots on everything. Drots.
For now we will. Yeah.
Okay.
To begin with, you do.
Right.
So you clone that. I have 3 of them. That comes in at 75 points.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll clone 2 more, and we're just gonna leave them with just grappling struts for now. Then I'm gonna put 2 droids in there.
2 tubs, right?
Yep.
Hyena class droids.
Both of them will have struts just to keep it consistent.
Right.
That puts me with 31 extra points. I could add another droid in there. Can I? I could just add another droid. Oh my god, that's awful.
You could actually put another bomber in there if you wanted to. Oh, do you want not one ordnance on your bombers though?
No, you do. You 100% do. So one of them is going to have will have DK1 probe droids as a payload. They're both going to they're both going to take I don't know. Do I do thread tracers? I don't do thread tracers. I think I do
torpedoes maybe?
Yeah, I don't know if I do plasmas. I think I do advanced protons.
APTs?
Yep. It still gives me 16 points left. Oh my god.
Yeah, what are you gonna do with 16 points otherwise?
Another ship. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you can't. You can't do another ship. You could drop. I could do another ship and drop some of that stuff.
That 12-point shuttle.
A 12-point shuttle.
I don't have 12-point torpedoes on.
Put energy shells on the other 2,
and then put in energy shells on the others. Yeah.
Oh my god, I still got 6 points. Oh.
Not if you do. If you put plasma torpedoes on, you don't. So change up your APTs for plasma torpedoes. Have a little bit bigger punch there, and then you have 2 droids with energy shells, 3 with discords.
Yeah, and I still end up with a 2-point bid.
It's solid, and that's at 2 points you wanted to beat Charles. So probably will decimate both of our swarms. So straight up delete us.
There you go. Well, that's my list. So there's our faction. I will tell you, I do not own that many colossal station mechanics, but
I don't own any actually.
Neither do I.
Well,
that is a good idea. I never thought about that. How many hull do those things have? Those are 5 or 6 hull?
5.
There's 6 minus the one that you have to put on at the start because of explosion with wings.
Yeah. So actually, I don't disagree with that. I think that's actually can be a viable list too. Actually,
I remember in person Farmer won a regional or something, like something crazy. He won like a big tournament using nothing but only fireball list.
Crazy.
Yep, I could see that. I have always played with the fireballs. The other list I've been playing with or been toying with too is been running 5 tie heavies together. I think that would be kind of fun, actually.
5's not a swarm.
It's not. Yeah, I know. That's why it's not a swarm. That's why I didn't put it up. I do think that's a fun list to run, though. But no, I don't think 5 is a swarm. Personally, I don't think 5 is a swarm. Just my opinion. I don't usually like to run with less than 6 ships, typically. All right. Anybody have anything else? We're gonna work towards getting our XCC games this week. I think we've been 2 hours. We're on almost 2 hours
Over
now.
2.
Woohoo! 2-hour episode. All right.
It was a good one. It was a good one. What did we learn?
What did we learn? That Tanner loves to fly swarms, and that Psych J just challenged everybody to beat Tanner at swarm play. That's what we learned today.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Because Matt, would you really want to fight against 5? Would you like to fight against 5 HMPs? If we consider 5 a swarm, you'd be fighting 5 HMPs. I would just do that. I would just run 5 HMPs.
I'm sorry, Chris. I heard recently that 5 ships is not a swarm.
I'm just telling you. If you
That's what I learned today.
Sites, you run 5 foresights, I'm just taking 5 HMPs. You'll never get your bullseyes off. Anyway, let's move past that. Thank you all for joining us. If you have not clicked the follow button here on Twitch, click the subscribe button in YouTube, or if you want, you can use your special Amazon God-given right to support the show by subscribing right here on Twitch. We will be back next week. I don't know if XCC, from the rumor, the rumor that I heard is that it is a 2-day event, and streamers are going to have to commit to those 2 days. So as long as they're not 2 days next week, we probably will be able to commit to that as well. So I'm hoping that they set some dates in the future later this month, just because I can't take 2 days off of work in less than a week time. But if they do that, I will definitely be taking those 2 days off, and it'll at least be me and maybe some guest commentators if nobody else can join us. With that being said, thank you. We'll be back live next week at 9 p.m. Eastern and 100 UTC, because now I'm going to just start using UTC time for everything. Thank you all, and have an amazing night.